Greetings, friends. I could not find a place indoors that was quiet and solitary where I could shout at the camera like a fool. And so I have had to come all the way out here into the heart of the forest in Vienna. This is Prater Park. This used to belong to rich and powerful people who wore funny hats and inbred. It's called the Habsburg Empire. Now it belongs to the people. Today it belongs to us. I want to talk about something that my teacher, a Zen master, called Anapana Zen. So Anapana simply means breathing Zen, or Zen that relates to and is the manifestation of the cyclical, repetitive activity of breathing out and breathing in. And my teacher claimed that this came from I think it's the Anapanasati Sutta, which is one of the classical Buddhist Sutra texts. I'll put the actual name of it right here when Editor Jack takes over. But for now, I want to engage in a really simple, clear, straightforward discussion of breathing Zen. So this past Sunday, I had the great good fortune of doing a Zazen meditation sits with my patrons over on patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner, which at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you how you can join that group of noble, regal, worldwide sages. Listen, for now we're talking about Anapana Zen. And to get ready for this sitting meditation with this group, I looked through some of my teacher's old Teisho texts, teachings that he gave at retreats. And there's an interesting one to begin this book, this collection. And in it, he reads a text, a short paragraph from the founder of our school, Lin Chi, or Rinzai. Rinzai, there's a collection of Rinzai's teachings or sayings, a very thin book called the Rinzai Roku, or the Book of Rinzai. And to begin one of our summer retreats, our teacher read a paragraph from Lin Chi, and then he spent the rest of the week sinking into, unpacking, and sharing his teachings on this teaching. Now, what Roshi says at the beginning of this talk is that a Zen master, no matter what comes out of their mouth, ultimately is trying to manifest through words the Dharma activity. Okay, what does that mean? Dharma's a big word. Wasn't there a television show called Dharma and Greg? Don't Silver Lake yuppies in Los Angeles with big, thick black glasses and Buddhas on their porch name their kids Dharma? Like, what does this word mean? It means law. It means like a truth. It means teaching. What is the Dharma activity? Well, here, my teacher says, what I'm going to discuss with you during this retreat, I'm moving my head because I'm not sure if I'm aligned here. It's one of the problems with doing a talk in the forest. And my front-facing video camera is so bad I have to turn it around. So I'm basically staring at the back of my phone right now. Hope my lips aren't just speaking and the top of my head isn't cut off or something. Okay, here we go. He says, I'm speaking about the activity of the Dharma, the activity that gives rise to the myriad things in the universe. So I don't want to say the word God, but that's one term we could use for the Dharma activity. But note the language that's being used. He's calling it he's calling it an activity. So he's saying right out of the gates here in this talk that there is an activity that gives rise to the myriad things in the universe. And we call that the Dharma activity. Now, what might an activity that gives rise to the myriad things in the entire universe, what might that look like? What might the true face of such an activity be? Well, Rinzai, in this paragraph that my teacher quotes, says, there is a true person of no fixed position who is always going in and out of the face of every one of you. And one of the contentions that my teacher holds in this Dharma talk that he's giving to us, this Teisho, is that we all have a limited or a conditional self. What is called in this particular teaching from Rinzai, it's our sphere of red flesh, right? I love that description, our sphere of red flesh. Okay? That's me, that's you, that's the personality. That's the guy that looks like this, right? But coming in and out of this sphere of red flesh, every moment, in and out, is the true person with no fixed position, a person of no rank. All right, Rinzai, okay, Roshi, so what does this mean, this true man of no rank? Well, one thing that Roshi talks a little bit about when he unpacks this teaching is that he says there's, Rinzai is presenting the idea that there are two types of self which we all manifest. On the one hand, the self, the heart-mind, the body with personality, or the red sphere of flesh, the me, the you, the us that are in this shape, in this manifestation, in this moment, in this world, in this time period, in this life. Us, right? What we normally think of as us. And then there is the self without personality. This true self, or this true being without position. Okay? So Roshi then talks a little bit about how you and I live, the small s self, right? We engage, Roshi says, in two activities. Caterpillar just dropped by on his silk string. I love being out here. Just before, there was a deer running behind me, and I stopped the video to let it pass, and then a little yippy dog bolted out of the grasses and started chasing this deer. And then the yippy dog was chased after by an attractive woman. And so it is in the Prater forest, as I continue to try and give you this little video. So Roshi talks about what you and I do. And he says, let's talk about the activity of expanding and the activity of contracting, or the activity of living and the activity of dying, or the activity of moving forwards or the activity of moving backwards, the activity of sitting down and thinking deeply, or the activity of going out and running a marathon. He says basically all activity can be reduced to expanding and contracting, or in different areas I've heard him say it's the activity that we do, the activity that all the myriad things in the universe does, and the activity of the cosmos itself, i.e. the Dharma activity, is basically mutually opposing opposites. So opposing but complementary opposites, uniting and then separating, uniting and then separating. So there's the no self of the uniting, the true self of the uniting, and then there's the separation, uniting and separating. This is Dharma activity. The activity that gives rise to the myriad things of the universe, the activity that I implied earlier. If we were to use theological language, we might even call this activity God. Now, what the heck did I just say? Well, friends, here we get at something crucial to Zen practice. You're not going to come to any greater understanding of what the Dharma activity is, or what a Zen Buddhist teacher might mean when he or she is discussing the Dharma activity, by thinking about it, by wrestling it to the ground inside your mind, like Jacob wrestling all night with the angel. In fact, one practices Zen Buddhism when we manifest it. So that's what my patrons and I did last Sunday. We sat down on cushions together and we did what you could call Anapana, or breathing Zen. So we came to do the activity of exhaling completely. And when the exhale was completed and there was no more exhaling necessary, somehow the exhale transformed into its opposite activity, and it gave birth to inhaling. And then we would do an inhale and receive our surroundings. Oh, this clean, beautiful air. There's such a nice breeze. It's been so hot here, and there's such a nice, clean, cool breeze here today in Prater Park. And if I would just shut up and stop exhaling my babble, oh, I can take that gift into me. And the oxygen disappears into my person and becomes my flesh, becomes my blood, and then becomes the words or the carbon dioxide that I say as I exhale into this camera. So you can see what's happening here. This is not theology. When we talk about the Dharma activity, we're talking about something that gets simpler and simpler and simpler the more we, quote, understand it, and the fewer and fewer words we have to explain it. In fact, we just sit and do it. So if you take anything away from this video, it can be an appreciation for breathing Zen. Just sitting and just breathing. And you might get bored during this practice of just breathing, but then one has the opportunity to turn that boredom into breath. Or you might get really anxious and start remembering that you've got bills to pay, that you were constipated this morning, which means you're not getting enough liquid in your diet, that your mother slipped and fell in the market the other day, and you live in Europe and you're scared that maybe she'll have to go to a hospital and sorts of bad things. Lots of stuff comes up for me, for example, when I sit. And what do I have the opportunity to do? Turn all of that into breathing. Because this activity of breathing is the manifestation of the Dharma activity, of this exchange of inside and outside, this cyclical activity that gives rise to the whole cosmos. Zen Buddhism holds that this activity gives rise to us in these simplest moments right here and now. It gives rise to our lives. Like, it's not an accident. This is not a totally confusing and bafflingly accidental planet. There's an activity that gives rise to my life, moment after moment. It's called breathing. Why not project that into larger circumstances, cosmic circumstances, and say there's an activity that gives rise to the whole cosmos moment after moment. And it's the cyclical activity of inside and outside, or this and that, or me and you, or plus and minus, or any pair of complementary but opposed opposites coming together and separating, coming together and separating. And it's opposed to God being a massive, massive thing that surrounds the whole cosmos. It's actually a tiniest, most simplest, basic activity at the heart of everything in the cosmos. If that makes any sense. I think that's what my teacher is trying to get at here as he explicates what Rinzai is talking about in the Rinzai Roku. Now we come to kind of an interesting, kind of a weird little part in this Teisho. Now my teacher spends a great deal of time talking about the activity of breathing, right? The activity of inhaling and exhaling. And he says this is an activity which arises without will and without desire. So we have to pause here and part ways with the monotheistic notion of a God or a creator of the universe, because my teacher is very clear on this, and I think the Buddhist tradition is very clear on this. The activity that gives rise to consciousness, to will, and to desire is without will, without desire. It's without thinking. Okay? So the foundation for thinking, the foundation for the individualistic self, the foundation for this ball of red flesh, for me, for you, for this tree, for that yipping dog I was talking about earlier, and the deer it was chasing, for the foundation for all the myriad things in the cosmos that manifest will and desire, the foundation for this, the activity that gives rise to all these myriad things, is will-less and desireless. Okay? So, breathing, when you fully breathe, there is no thinking, he says. You are just continuing to breathe without will and without desire. So fundamentally, or originally, the breath is something that is emerging without any thought, any will, or any desire. So what happens is we reach the extreme point of an inhalation or an exhalation. We reach the point, and when we reach this point, Roshi says something happens. What happens when we reach the extreme point of an inhalation? He says the inhalation and the exhalation split apart. So there's a moment when nothing's happening, when the inhalation has not yet fully expended itself, and the exhalation has not yet fully begun, or vice versa. Okay? And he says, what emerges there? Roshi calls it space. He says, what is it that emerges when the exhalation and the inhalation split apart? It is space that emerges there. And he says something interesting here. He says that space emerges between the inhalation and the exhalation. And the space that emerges is what we call, in Buddhism, the 5 skandhas. And the 5 skandhas are how the self is understood in Buddhism. And so in that space between the inhalation and the exhalation, that space that is neither inhalation nor exhalation, that space that is not breathing, but is so utterly necessary for breath, because without that space, in between the inhalation and the exhalation, I would exhale for eternity. It'd be a kind of living hell. Or I would inhale for eternity, and that would be also a kind of living hell. In order for inhaling and exhaling to arise, in order for this activity of mutually opposing but complementary activities to arise, they must arise from that which is neither one or the other, but from which both emerge, a space. And he is saying, also emerging from this space, which has no characteristics, which has no will, which has no desire, also emerging from this space are the skandhas, or the self. And of course the skandhas, I like the definition of the skandhas here, so I'll read it to you. The 5 skandhas are, or the self is, or the skandhas give rise to the self, or we think of the self as the 5 skandhas. And what are they? They're form, sensations, perception, psychological patterns, and consciousness. That is, form, sensations, perceptions, psychological patterns, consciousness. Now, I think I am not going to fully unpack this and explain it because I don't know how to. I will just say that I find it very interesting that how the Zen tradition and my teacher in this particular Teisho and Lin Chi, the founder of the tradition, use something as simple as breathing to explain the entire cosmos. And it's not that it's a metaphor, but it's a manifestation. So breathing Zen is prayer. It's the manifestation of a miracle. It's turning water into wine. It's having a psychedelic trip to the basketball dribbling elves at the edge of the universe that you pay a visit to when you smoke DMT, baby. It's all there, right on the cushion, when you sit down, like I did with my patrons the other day, to do breathing Zen. There's nothing to think about. There's no teachings to get. You could forget everything that I just talked about here, and I can forget everything that's in between the cover of this little book here. And all we have to do is give the present moment and its contents completely to the breath and posture when we're sitting and doing sitting meditation. It's not a thinking practice. Don't outsmart yourself. I did that for 13 years on the cushion. I was trying to answer koans and trying to have kensho and trying to have satori. And that effort was the exact thing that got in the way of me and the Dharma activity being one. And that activity is manifested, I don't know if we could say most completely, but it's manifested in a simple and totally complete way in this practice of breathing Zen. It's all there. And so we go closer and closer to and deeper into that activity. And we learn how to breathe when we do our sitting meditation practice, which is to say, there's like a flow where our thoughts and our emotions and our distracted mind kind of keeps going back into the breath, dissolving into the breath. And then a new self emerges. It's just like one breath ends and a new breath begins. The exhale ends. There's that space that Roshi talked about. And then there is zero, he would call it, or complete unity. True love, the Dharma activity, God, no self, no will, no desire. And then from that, a new self is born. Moment after moment, breath after breath. And of course, then our job is not to get fixated or stuck on that red ball of flesh, right? Not to get stuck on our problems, not to get stuck on our situation, not to get stuck on our fears and our desires, not to get stuck in the game of life, but always remembering the source or the true person of no rank who is coming in and out of our face and our features and our sense organs and our body moment after moment after moment. That which gives rise to will and desire and gives rise to us. That activity, that Dharma activity. What do you think about that? I hope this video that I made here in this forest was not totally disgusting or horrifying. And if you liked it and you want to support what happens on this channel here, you can go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner, and you can support this channel there. You can also make a one-time donation through PayPal, and there's a link in the video description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.